Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered, behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. We have another really exciting interview ahead of us about helping men and women who have a vision and want help to bring it to life. Today, you'll be meeting Sindy Warren, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who puts a huge priority on balance, which means on her relationships, mental well-being, and growing her coaching business. Welcome to the show, Sindy. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Suzy. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
I am so happy you're here. Your background's so nice. I love that chair you're sitting in. I know as a listener, you're not seeing what I'm looking at, but it's rattan and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm fun, right?
It is. And I am quite comfortable.
You look comfortable. Perfect. Okay. Well, I know we're going to have a great conversation today about your midlife entrepreneur story. We'll be talking about your business and what's going really well, and also what midlife issues might be getting in your way a little bit here and there, and maybe challenging for you in your life as well as being a business owner. So let's get started with how old you are, how long you've been an entrepreneur, and what it is you do in the world. So take it away.
Wonderful. I am 52 years young. I first became an entrepreneur. I think of it as like my inadvertent foray into entrepreneurship back in 2004. And I am a lawyer, and I started an HR consulting business when my 21-year-old daughter was a baby. So that was really the beginning of it. I did that for many, many years. And I started a coaching business about 4.5 years ago. And that's really the first time in my life I consider myself a full-blown entrepreneur, which is what I consider myself now.
That's so interesting. What about being a coach made you feel more entrepreneurial than the other things that you did that kind of seem entrepreneurial to me?
Sure. So the HR consulting business was very law adjacent because I practiced employment law for about a decade. And then that business, as I said, it was almost inadvertent in that I knew I didn't want to be in law firm life anymore or on the partner track. And I wanted to use my degree. And so it just sort of bubbled along for a while and eventually turned into a successful business that was mostly word of mouth, referral based. I really did no active marketing. Fast forward nearly 18 years and I started this coaching business. And part of it, Suzy, is probably just that the world of online business has changed so much. So now I have clients all over the world and I market online. I coach online via Zoom, like we're having this conversation now. So I think that aspect of the business and just the changes in technology and social media really shifted the way I thought about my business. And I became much more intentional as a business owner.
It's so true. You know, when I first started in, what year was it? 2014, Zoom wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. My coach training was teleseminar even.
That's wild.
I know. Yeah. It doesn't even seem like it was that long ago, but it
doesn't.
And then COVID pushed the envelope, right? Then everything.
It really did. Yeah. It really did. And I think that was sort of the happy coincidence, if you will, of me going all in on my coaching business and sort of stepping away from my HR consulting business, because in the pandemic, it was such a time ripe for life coaching and business coaching for people.
That is true. And I just love how creative everybody got. You know, it was so fun to see professions who would never even imagine that they could work online, figure it out. Like it was such a creative opportunity for so many people to think differently.
Absolutely. And I have been a yoga teacher for many years. That's sort of my side gig. And we immediately pivoted and started teaching yoga online. Like I never thought that was going to be a thing where I could actually see my students in the little Zoom squares and offer alignment cues and things like that, like just from the comfort of my own home. So yeah, we had to get creative.
Get creative and learn all about mics and lighting and those kinds of things. That was the thing. There's like, oh yeah, we have to learn about this stuff too. Yeah, it's a lot. So in your business, you started to zone in on people having a vision. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So I would say, Suzy, this interest of mine really dovetails with my passion for yoga philosophy, which in a nutshell is all about how do you lead an intentional, meaningful life. So one thing that I have worked with a lot of people on and I help a lot of clients with is starting and growing service-based businesses such as mine or yours. And it really starts with the seed of an idea. You have to have a vision. And so many people will think about doing something, even if it's making a relationship change or moving or, really anything in life. It's not just limited to profession or entrepreneurship. Starts with a vision. And a lot of people, first of all, don't even go that far. And then second of all, if they do, aren't sure how to bring it to life. And I really love the combination of helping people imagine what's possible and then create action plans. And I can get in the weeds and get very analytical with people. My lawyer brain comes out. It's like, well, okay, what are we going to do to make this a reality? And when I think about the variety of topics that I work with my clients on, that's what is the common thread. It's creating a vision for whatever chapter of life you're in and figuring out how to bring it to life.
And you work with men too.
I do. I would say about half my clients are men.
Oh, that's so interesting. Did it ever, was that an intentional choice? How did you figure out that that's what you wanted to do?
No, it's actually hilarious. When I first started my coaching business, I thought I'm going to coach women on whatever sort of mini niche I zeroed in on. And I remember my husband looking at me and saying, why would you do that? And I said, oh, honey, you don't understand. It's just for marketing. No, I've always, growing up as professionally as a lawyer, I'm very comfortable with men, worked with men, had men work under me, above me, etc. And I found men just sort of coming to me and was quickly realized, well, that's so silly to exclude an entire group of people. And I love coaching men. I love coaching and most of the men I coach are in our age demographic, 50s, 60s, even beyond. And there's something about that stage of life that I think is really challenging for men in a way that isn't always addressed as much as it seems to be in the zeitgeist now with women in midlife. So I really like helping all the people.
I was just going to ask you, what do you notice that's different with men?
One thing is major identity shifts related to slowing down or making shifts professionally. And for a lot of my clients, they're used to being sort of the alpha or, they're in the C-suite. And then they're really trying to figure out what's next. Like either a circumstance has changed and I'm not going to do this anymore, or I'm forecasting a few years forward. What is life going to look like? And I think that is something that so many of my clients really struggle with, creating the vision and then bringing it to life just because it's new. They've been, I'll just speak for my male clients. They've been doing the same thing for decades. And, obviously women in midlife go through major identity shifts as well. But I noticed that with men, they're a little, the idea of even an identity shift is a little more jarring for them.
Interesting. So as a midlife woman running a business, and you've lots of experience running businesses, what midlife challenges are you facing? How is midlife and the typical stuff that goes on in midlife getting in your way of running your business the way you might want to, or the easiest thing for you? How's it getting in the way?
Well, first of all, the hormone changes are real. So I was just telling a student in the yoga class I taught this morning, such horrible insomnia last night. I used to be the best sleeper in the world. And since I'm in perimenopause, I'm just not. So that is a huge challenge for me, going up in my business on a day-to-day basis, the way that I never had to think about before. I notice I'm making a few more Starbucks runs than I did 5 years ago. The other thing I would say is, because I am so curious about the midlife transition, I can't help but introspect for myself as well. And when I first started my business a few years ago, I would say I was so excited. It was just go, go, go all in. And now as I've gotten a little older, even that shift out of my late 40s into my early 50s, I've noticed I'm projecting 10 years ahead, 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. I don't think that was even in my mind when I was 47, 48, which seems so silly because it wasn't that long ago. But there's something about me needing to curate for myself. Okay, what's my vision? It's not just more is better, faster is better. Like I am sort of in a reflective phase of pausing and like asking myself the hard questions that I would rather be asking my clients than myself.
That's a good way to put it. Also, in your notes, you mentioned that your husband was close to retiring. So this is a topic that comes up a fair bit in this podcast when two people aren't exactly in sync about retiring. Yeah. So tell me how that's coming up for you.
So it's so interesting. My husband is 15 years older than me to the day. Our birthdays are 1 year apart. 1 day apart, but 15 years. And he is a litigator, practicing lawyer. He has always been handled big cases, stressful work, works more than full time. And he's 67 now. So as we're talking about, okay, 1 more year, 2 more years, 3 more years tops, what does that look like? And having those conversations with him and also thinking about what that means for me and how I want to spend my days is, I would say this is the first time in our 20 plus year marriage that I've even really thought about our age difference, even though 15 years is a lot. We're very, we seem like we're the same age. But now being at these different precipices, like I'm not going to retire, anytime soon. But what will it look like? Will it change? Will I want it to change? So I'm kind of reassessing that as well and trying to support him. And as he gets closer to what's going to be a really, really tremendous identity shift.
Exactly. And I guess some people on the podcast have talked about it as you're gearing up when others are gearing down. And also in the friend circles, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah, I've been watching some of my friends retire and I'm like, yes, pensions. They're able to retire. Yeah. So it's really surprising when you're at this point where you're really jazzed about what you're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. So that can create almost a little bit of, I don't want to say dissonance, in the relationship or within yourself, but it's an opportunity for exploration and getting really clear about what you want, like right now and in the near future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's always fun to do the hard work that we help our clients do.
Yes. Yes.
So how have you noticed being an older woman affects being an entrepreneur and vice versa? What are you noticing about that intersection of being a little older now and putting yourself out in the world as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think I have way more confidence now than I did 20 years ago. I mean, there is certainly something to be said for caring less about what other people think of you that comes, I'm sure not necessarily or inevitably with age, but with maturity and more life experience and more reflection. I also noticed that like my close circle, like my inner circle is smaller. And the pandemic probably had something to do with that as well, where you really just hunker down. You're like, wait, who are my people? It's not everyone I, grab a coffee with or say hi to at the gym or whatever. So I do think being older gives me confidence. And I also feel like I have so much more wisdom to share than perhaps some of the competition that might be shinier or more sparkly or more media savvy. I feel like very well rooted in my identity as a coach, knowing my values, knowing who I am, knowing what I want to be out there doing. So there's a steadiness in it. And then, of course, the disadvantage of the hormone changes and noticing, gray hairs where there didn't used to be any and things like that. But I would say overall, I actually love getting older as it pertains to my business.
With the hormone changes, what exactly is happening that is affecting the way you think about your business at all? Or are you changing your schedule or are you making active changes as a result of any of that?
So that is such a great question. I mean, one is really prioritizing my sleep in a way that I never really had to think about before, as I mentioned. And the other, I think I've always been pretty good about, what we can sort of bucket as self-care. So I teach yoga, I practice yoga, I exercise regularly, I meditate, and just making time for those things 10 years ago, perhaps they weren't quite as non-negotiable to me as they are now. But I do notice that if I am not keeping myself centered and grounded, I am not showing up as effectively as I want to in my business. So it really does go hand in hand. And I feel also a sense of this was different than in my HR consulting business. I wasn't, I could be going through whatever, taking care of myself or not, and then show up and deliver a great training in a workplace on sexual harassment. In coaching, it's so much more intimate that how I care for myself, mind, body, soul feels more critical than ever so that I can be the best coach I can.
Yeah, it's very personal, our work. And you do really have to have your act together to be able to show up for somebody else the way you are being paid to do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely. How are you protecting your sleep? Exactly. What are you doing? Sleep is such an important topic. Are you going to bed earlier? Do you need to use any sleep aids? Like I have CPAP now.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, it's that device to help with oxygen, with snoring.
Oh my gosh.
It's the one you see the older men using.
Yeah. I need to get one for my husband, Suzy.
Well, he needs to go for a sleep study. I'm going to be doing more episodes about CPAP because I'm very committed.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Very weird looking. It's very weird looking. And I'm going to be sharing a room with somebody on a cruise in a few months, wearing my CPAP, sharing a room. I definitely had some thoughts about that. And, the physical result from wearing it and using it the way I'm supposed to, it went from having a problem to not having a problem. I couldn't ignore it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So I would say for me, I do prioritize getting to bed early, which is just my happy place anyway. I'm an early riser. I love to go to bed early. And I have no technology at all in my room other than my Kindle. So, and I do like to read. It's funny. Someone just gave me a book that I really wanted to read, just a novel. And I had to get it on my Kindle because with the Kindle, even though I had the hardcover, you can lie on your side, you can roll over to the other side, the lights can be off. So reading has always been something I love to do. I'm just curious about the world and human nature. So I read a lot in bed, but fiction only. The nonfiction that I read, that's usually a hardcover book with pen and highlighter. That's more active, like during the day.
Yeah.
So having a good novel, I think, is a key to for me, looking forward to getting into bed, getting a chunk of reading done, and then dozing off.
Oh, I like that routine. Very nice. Now, what do you want next in your business? What's coming up for you?
That's a great question. I really have to say I want more of the same, which is just an amazing roster of clients. I'm not at this point looking to scale, as they say. Like grow, yes. I love working with people. I love supporting people I know very well because we've been working together for a few years. And I also really enjoy meeting new people. And I'm just a naturally curious person. So for me, the most satisfaction is really the one-on-one coaching. And I also do some group coaching, which is fabulous, with a smaller group who I know very well, who I'm supporting with their business growth. And I want more of the same.
Well, that's nice. And in your notes, you mentioned the balance again and talking about making time to be with your husband and family. So what does that look like for you?
So it definitely looks like date nights weekly, and we're empty nesters. So, we visit the children. We care a lot about the family, but for me, it's time with my husband. It's time being active, going on walks, that sort of thing. Time spent on the phone with my daughter, my stepkids, my grandkids, and time with really good friends. For me, a balanced day is I've gotten a little bit of all of that in, and I've done some impactful work.
Lovely. And what do you think the most surprising thing is about being a midlife woman over 50 and being an entrepreneur? Has anything really surprised you?
So much of the entrepreneurial journey, I would say, has actually surprised me. I mean, one thing I would say is you have to take care of yourself mentally and be grounded and very clear about why you're doing what you're doing, because it would be so easy. You're not going into an office where there's a shared mission, culture, etc. The way I did when I was a lawyer. You have to just be so clear on what you're doing and why. And I think that requires a level of reflection and introspection that feels more important to me at this age than it did 10 years ago. I don't know if that's true or not, or if I'm just, that's just sort of happening to me naturally as I'm older and in my 50s, et cetera. But that's something that I really keep coming back to, is like the reflection, the quiet, the stillness, which is so much a part of the yoga practice and is not how I'm naturally wired. Left to my own devices, if I didn't like manage my nervous system, manage my brain, I would just be going all the time, doing. And I'm noticing that I'm really needing to slow it down in some respects.
Mm-hmm. In your notes, I'm just looking at the sentence that I wanted to ask you about, is you talked about your sneaky inner critic who's always, telling you that you're not enough. So what goes on with that for you and how do you manage that?
That's a great question. I mean, I do think all of us have an inner critic of some kind or another. Mine really gets on my case about, am I, quote, good enough in the business? Not with respect to the coaching itself, but with respect to growing the business, having a profitable business, things that I didn't receive any formal education on. I'm a very self-taught entrepreneur, as so many of us are in the online business world. So I definitely need to, if I don't land a client or I have a slower month or something like that, I notice that she gets very loud, my inner critic. And the other thing I would say is, as a woman in my 50s, noticing when she has a lot to say about physical changes that we go through. And I do think this culture idolizes the aesthetics of youth so much. And so that's something that I think those of us that don't want our inner critics to take over at this stage in life need to actively counter.
One thing
those
I always
are the
think
two
about,
areas. Yeah.
Those are great. One of the things I always think about is, as I'm aging, I do enjoy tweezers and some time in front of a 10 more times magnification mirror. But I'm always thinking, you know what? All my friends, nobody can see anymore. So it's good. I've got the whiskers. Nobody can see.
Hysterical. That is hysterical.
We're all aging together.
We're all aging together. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Definitely. Okay. So Sindy, how can people best get in touch with you?
So they can find me on my website, which is bluetreecoaching.net. That's the name of my coaching business, Blue Tree Coaching. I'm on Instagram at Blue Tree Coaching. I'm on LinkedIn. My name, Sindy, and I spell it with an S, Warren. And I love to talk to people, whether they're looking to grow a service-based business, whether there's some intersection with my legal background that can be helpful, or whether they're just looking to create a new vision for themselves and their lives.
And you've got a freebie as well too, right?
I do. I have a few freebies. They're all on my website. One of them is, I forget what I named it, but it's how to make sure your service-based business is legally sound. So I do a little crossover work with the law, my legal background. And then I also just have a new freebie called Planning Your Next Chapter. And it's a little mini book that just guides you through some reflection exercises and some ways to think about what's next in life and business.
Oh my gosh, we have so much in common. It's so fun to hear you thinking about what I think about, which is what's possible in midlife. It's so exciting. So of course, I'm going to have all of those links and things in the show notes, and they'll be very easy to find. So that's awesome. So Sindy, amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time from your busy day and sharing all of this. I really appreciate how you are helping people to also dream.
Thank you, Suzy. It's been a real privilege talking.
All right. That's it for now. If you're listening and loving what you hear, please like and subscribe. Reviews are great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over and also an entrepreneur and would like to come on the show, please go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and fill out an application. We'd love to have you on to share your story. Thanks so much for listening. It is never too late to put yourself on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with this show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.